G'day everybody and welcome back to a brand new video here on the YouTube channel. Today I'll be taking you back all the way to the year 1898 and I'll be sharing the story of the first ever AFL Grand Final. Now if you guys do go on to enjoy this video, could you please show me that by liking the video, subscribing to the channel if you're new, and of course hitting that notification bell so you can be notified when new videos coming out. Enough wasting your time, let's get straight into it. In the year 1898, back when the AFL was called the VFL, the Essendon Bombers took on Fitzroy Football Club in the first ever AFL Grand Final. During that season, the Essendon Bombers finished at the top of the ladder while Fitzroy finished in third, one spot behind the Collingwood Magpies. The week before the Grand Final, Essendon had secured that Grand Final spot while the Essendon Bombers had to take on the Collingwood Magpies in a semi-final at Brunswick Street Oval. By the end of the first quarter, Collingwood had kicked 1 goal 2 and Fitzroy had just kicked 3 points. At halftime, the scores were 10-11 and Fitzroy had led by 1 point. At three-quarter time, 0 goals had been scored in that quarter as Collingwood didn't even render in a score and Fitzroy kicked 3 points. And by full time, Fitzroy had run the game by 11 points and moved on to the 1898 AFL Grand Final. On the 24th of September 1898, both the Essendon Bombers and the Fitzroy Football Club faced off in the Grand Final at Junction Oval. The lineup consisted of players that I'm not sure any of the viewers would have heard of. Fitzroy's backline consisted of players like Stan Reid, Johnny Power and Jerry Nolan, who were full back, and their half-backs were Alex Solon, Pat Hickey and also Jack Dalton. Their centres were Eddie Drohan, Harry Clark and Callie Robinson. Their followers were Mick Grace, Bill Spearin, Bill Potter, Pat Descrimes and also Paddy Noonan. And finally their forwards had Fred Fontaine, Jim Grace and Alf McDougall up in their full forward, and half forward was Chris Kieran, Bert Sharp and Bill Dalton. Essendon's backline had Ted Kinner, Ned Officer and Hugh Gavin in full back, and their half forwards showed George Stuckey, Jim Anderson and George Vorton. Their three centres consisted of players such as Joe Grooves, Harry Wright and also Alf Gray. The followers for the Bombers were Charlie Forbes, Arthur Gleghorn, Pat O'Lohan, Bill Jackson and also son Barry. And finally their forwards had Conrad Ten Brink, Charlie Moore as well as Gus Kearney full up forward. And their half forwards were Todd Collins, Colin Campbell and also George Hastings. The captain for Fitzroy was a man by the name of Alex Solon and the captain for Essendon was George Stuckey. Essendon and Fitzroy had faced off twice in that year when the Essendon Bombers bet them in round 1 by 53 points and also in round 8 by 43 points. Even though the Junction Oval had a max capacity of 7,000, that didn't change anything as the crowd attendance for that game was 16,538. By the end of the first quarter, the Bombers had a score of 6 total points, kicking 1 goal, and Fitzroy had an 11-point lead against the Essendon Bombers after having a score of 17 with them kicking 2 goals 5. And the margin wasn't much different at halftime either. As the Bombers had kicked 3 goals 1 going into the second half, they had a score of 19, meaning they had extended their quarter time score by 13 points. And Fitzroy had a 10-point lead as their score was 29 points with them kicking 2 goals in that second quarter, meaning their lead was extended by 12 points. Going into the second half, it was pretty much any team's game, but based on how frequently goals were being scored, Fitzroy fans were pretty confident. But the margin slowly started to get larger by the 3-quarter time siren. At some of the third quarter, the Bombers were down by 16 points with them only scoring 1 point during the quarter, while Fitzroy had a comfortable lead with them kicking 1 goal 1 in the third quarter, extending their lead by 7. As the final siren sounded, the Fitzroy Football Club were announced as the 1898 VFL Premiers. Even though they only scored 2 points in the final quarter, the Essendon Bombers failed to kick a single goal in the second half as they kicked 3 points during the final quarter of the game. And Fitzroy won the game by 15 total points. And based on the stats, the Norm Smith medal or the best on ground would have been given to Jim Grace, with him scoring 2 goals during the grand final for Fitzroy. And the only person that could have possibly beaten him was Todd Collins from the Essendon Bombers, who also kicked 2 goals. And as disposals weren't counted back then, I'm unable to determine who would have been best on ground. And the very next year, in the 1899 Grand Final, it was a Grand Final between South Melbourne, now known as the Sydney Swans, taking on Fitzroy, now known as the Brisbane Lions, which to this day is the only Sydney v Brisbane AFL Grand Final, well that is until this Saturday in the 2024 AFL Grand Final. Thank you everyone so much for tuning in to watch this video. Now if you guys did enjoy this video, could you please show me that by liking the video, subscribing to the channel if you're new, and of course hitting that notification bell so you can be notified when new videos are coming out. And I'll see you on the next one. Peace.